The first time I saw the locket, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty old mansion. It was a cold, ugly thing, heavy and tarnished, with a complicated clasp that seemed to bite rather than open. My great-aunt Beatrice, propped up in her enormous four-poster bed, fixed her milky blue eyes on me and pressed it into my palm with a strength that belied her 94 years. "For you, Elara," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves skittering across stone. "Keep it safe. They will not understand its value." I closed my fingers around the cold metal. "Thank you, Aunt B. It's unique." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "It is that. Remember, child, the greatest treasures are often hidden in plain sight. And so are the greatest dangers." 3 days later, she was gone. And the locket, along with her entire estate, became the epicenter of a storm I never saw coming. The reading of the will was held in the same opulent, dusty library where I'd spent so many childhood summers, hiding from my cousins with a book. Now, at 38, I felt just as small and out of place. I worked as a restorer in a small museum, my hands more accustomed to delicate brushes and archival glue than the polished mahogany and leather of this room. My clothes, a simple, well-worn navy dress, marked me as different from the rest of my family. My brother, Marcus, sat to my right, already looking like the lord of the manor in his custom-tailored suit. His wife, Chloe, was a vision of calculated elegance, her diamond bracelet catching the light every time she shifted. Across from me were my cousins, David and Sarah, their expressions a mixture of greed and impatience. We were the last of the line, the vultures circling the remains of a formidable woman's life. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, a man so dry he seemed to be made of parchment, cleared his throat and began to read the formalities. I tuned most of it out, my fingers finding the lump of the locket in my pocket. I'd taken to carrying it with me, a strange, comforting weight. A piece of Aunt B. Then, Mr. Sterling's words snapped me to attention. "And to my great-niece, Elara Vance, I bequeath my entire estate, including the property known as Blackwood Manor, its contents, and all financial assets, investments, and holdings contained in my portfolio." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. It lasted for 3 full seconds before the room erupted. "What?" Marcus was on his feet, his face a mask of thunderous disbelief. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake. This is an outrage." David spluttered, his face turning an alarming shade of purple. "She barely visited. I was the one who handled her affairs." Chloe's elegant composure cracked. She turned to me, her eyes narrowed into venomous slits. "What did you do, Elara? Did you manipulate her? She was senile at the end. We all know it." I could only stare, my own shock as profound as theirs. I had expected a small keepsake, perhaps a few $1,000s. Not this. Never this. I didn't. Aunt B never said. Mr. Sterling adjusted his glasses, his expression impassive. "There is no mistake. The will has been thoroughly vetted and witnessed. Ms. Vance is the sole beneficiary." "Sole beneficiary?" Sarah shrieked. "What about us? We're family. She's just the weird one who plays with old bones and dust." The insults washed over me, but the implications sank in. Aunt B, the woman who had always seen the quiet, curious child beneath the awkward adult, had given me everything. And in doing so, she had made me a target. The following weeks were a special kind of hell. The initial shock from my family curdled into a cold, relentless campaign of pressure and hostility. The first salvo came from Marcus, who cornered me after the funeral reception, his voice a low, menacing growl meant only for my ears. Elara, be reasonable, he said, his hand gripping my elbow too tightly. You can't possibly handle an estate like Blackwood. You live in a one-bedroom apartment, for God's sake. You have no concept of the taxes, the maintenance. It's a white elephant. Sign it over to me. I'll give you a fair cash settlement. Enough for you to be comfortable. Comfortable? I pulled my arm away. Aunt Bee left it to me, Marcus. She wanted me to have it. Aunt Bee was a lonely old woman who lost her marbles, he snapped. She felt sorry for you because you're alone. This isn't about what she wanted, it's about what's practical. You'll be bankrupt in a year. The next attack was from Chloe, who employed a different tactic. She showed up at my apartment with a folder full of brochures for luxury condominiums. Think of it, Elara, she cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. A fresh start. A modern place, no more drafts and dust. You could travel, buy nice clothes. Live the life you deserve. Just let us handle the burden of the matter. Even my cousins tried emotional blackmail. Our children were counting on that inheritance for college, Elara, David whined over the phone. You're stealing from your own family. How can you be so selfish? Through it all, I held firm. Blackwood Manor wasn't just a house to me, it was a sanctuary. It was the place where Aunt Bee had taught me about art, history, and the quiet strength of unconventional women. It was filled with memories that felt more like my true inheritance than any dollar amount. And a locket. I didn't know why, but I felt its weight was tied to my promise. I moved into the manor, the vast, silent rooms both a comfort and a reproach. I felt like an imposter in my own life. I continued my work at the museum remotely, the familiar routine of restoration a grounding force amidst the chaos. But my family didn't relent. They launched a legal challenge, contesting the will on the grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. The lawsuit was their declaration of war. The discovery process was humiliating. My financial records were pored over, my personal life dissected. My modest salary, my student loan debt, my quiet, solitary existence, all of it was used to paint a picture of an incompetent, desperate woman who had preyed on a vulnerable elder. The pressure was immense. I lay awake at night, the silence of the manor pressing down on me, wondering if they were right. Was I selfish? Was I in over my head? The only thing that kept me going was the locket. I would take it out and hold it, its cold, unyielding surface a talisman. Keep it safe, Aunt Bee's voice echoed in my memory. They will not understand its value. One afternoon, desperate for a distraction, I decided to properly clean it. I set up my restoration kit at the massive library desk. Under the bright light of my magnifying lamp, I examined the locket more closely than ever before. The tarnished silver was intricately engraved with what I had always assumed were just floral patterns. But now, I saw they were tiny, precise lines, not flowers, but a map. A map of what, I couldn't tell. My heart began to beat a little faster. This was the kind of puzzle I understood. This was my language. I worked carefully, using a mild solvent and a soft brush to clean centuries of grime from the grooves. As the tarnish gave way, the lines became clearer, more deliberate. And then I noticed something else. The clasp, the one that always seemed to bite, wasn't just a clasp. It was a puzzle lock. My restoration skills were now focused on a single, personal object. For days, I worked on the locket, my professional patience applied to this mysterious heirloom. I studied the mechanism, noting how certain parts seemed to slide and twist. It was a masterpiece of miniature engineering. Finally, after hours of meticulous manipulation, I heard a soft, distinct click. The locket sprang open. There was no photograph inside. Instead, nestled against the faded velvet lining, was a small, tightly folded piece of parchment. With trembling hands, I carefully extracted it and laid it on the desk, using my smallest tools to smooth it open. It wasn't a love letter or a sentimental note. It was a cipher. A series of numbers, letters, and strange symbols were arranged in a grid. At the top, in Aunt Be's elegant, spidery handwriting, were 2 words, the Vanguard. My breath caught in my throat. The Vanguard. I'd heard that name before. In hushed tones, from Aunt B when I was a teenager, talking about our family history. It wasn't a social club or a business. It was a secret society. A group of powerful, influential women throughout history who had worked from the shadows to protect knowledge, fund innovation, and influence the course of events. I had always thought it was one of her fanciful stories. This cipher was a key. But a key to what? The discovery shifted something inside me. The feeling of being an imposter began to fade, replaced by a burning curiosity. Aunt B hadn't just given me a house and money. She had given me a responsibility. A legacy. They will not understand its value. Now, I was starting to. I began to spend my evenings in the library, not hiding, but hunting. I pulled down old ledgers, family journals, and correspondence. I cross-referenced dates and names with a cipher. The world of the Vanguard began to take shape. I found coded references in mundane shopping lists, hidden messages in the margins of gardening diaries. Aunt Beatrice hadn't just been a member, she had been a custodian, a keeper of the society's most vital secrets and assets. And the estate she had left me, it wasn't just her personal wealth. It was the Vanguard's treasury. The financial assets and holdings were a network of trusts, investments, and endowments that funded the society's work across the globe. The manor itself was a secure repository, its walls and hidden rooms containing artifacts and documents of immense historical and financial significance. The lawsuit wasn't just my family being greedy. If they gained control, they would unwittingly dismantle and expose a centuries-old organization. Their victory would be a catastrophe. This knowledge became my armor. When Marcus called to check in and subtly threatened me with the escalating legal costs, his words no longer found their mark. "You're fighting a battle you can't win, little sister," he said, his voice slick with condescension. "Just give up now, and we can still be a family." "We stopped being a family the moment you decided my inheritance was more important than my wishes, Marcus," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "The manor is not for sale. The estate is not for negotiation." There was a stunned silence on the other end. I had never spoken to him like that before. "You're making a huge mistake," he finally hissed before hanging up. The legal battle reached its climax on the day of the mediation hearing. It was a last-ditch effort to avoid a costly and public trial. We gathered in a sterile conference room, my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Amanda Pierce, on one side, Marcus, Chloe, David, Sarah, and their high-priced legal team on the other. My family had come dressed for victory. Marcus wore his most intimidating power suit. Chloe was a vision of cold fury in designer black. They looked at me with naked contempt. I was wearing a simple, tailored gray suit I'd bought for the occasion. It felt like a uniform. In my purse, tucked safely in an inner pocket, was the locket and the decoded cipher. I didn't know if I would need it, but its presence gave me strength. Their lawyer, a man named Reynolds with the predatory smile of a shark, began. "Ms. Vance, my clients are prepared to be exceedingly generous. They will drop all legal claims, and in return, you will sign over the deed to Blackwood Manor and 90% of the liquid assets. You can keep a small sum, enough to pay off your considerable debts. This is more than fair. Amanda started to object, but I placed a hand on her arm. I looked directly at Marcus. No. His jaw tightened. Elara, this is your last chance. If we go to trial, we will destroy you. We have evidence of your instability, your financial desperation. The court will see you for what you are. And what am I, Marcus? I asked, my voice quiet but clear. You're a lonely, bitter woman who took advantage of a sweet old lady, Chloe spat out, her composure finally shattering. You've always been jealous of us, of our lives. This is your pathetic way of getting back at us for being successful. I looked at each of them in turn, my brother, my sister-in-law, my cousins. I saw not family, but adversaries. I saw the profound lack of understanding that Aunt B had warned me about. You're wrong, I said, standing up. The room fell silent. This was never about jealousy. And it was never just about money. Aunt Beatrice didn't give me an inheritance. She gave me a legacy. One you would have sold for scrap without a second thought. Legacy? David snorted. Don't be dramatic. It's a house and money. No, I said, pulling the folded cipher from my purse. I didn't show it to them, but I held it in my hand like a shield. It's a trust. A responsibility. The assets you're so desperate to get your hands on aren't just wealth. They fund scholarships for young women in science, they protect endangered cultural sites, they support medical research you've never even heard of. Blackwood Manor isn't a house, it's an archive. A living history. I could see the confusion on their faces. They didn't understand. They couldn't. What are you babbling about? Marcus said, his voice dripping with scorn. Have you finally lost it? Secret societies and hidden treasures? In a way, yes, I replied, a sad smile touching my lips. But you don't have the key. You never did. I turned to their lawyer, Mr. Reynolds. You can proceed with your trial. But know this. The fortune you're trying to claim is held in a series of blind trusts and protected foundations across 3 continents. The moment you succeed in challenging the will, if you succeed, you will trigger a series of legal and financial protocols that will divert every last dollar to charitable organizations before you can touch a single cent. You will inherit nothing but a dusty old house and a mountain of legal bills. The case you built is based on the premise that I manipulated a vulnerable woman for personal gain. Our defense will be that she entrusted me with a sacred duty that my own family is too blind and greedy to comprehend. I let my words hang in the air. I was bluffing, but only partially. My research into the Vanguard structure had revealed layers of legal protection I was only beginning to understand. Marcus stared at me, his face a mixture of fury and dawning, horrified comprehension. He saw something in my eyes he had never seen before, not weakness, not fear, but absolute, unshakable resolve. I was no longer the quiet, easily intimidated little sister. I was the custodian of Blackwood. You're lying, he whispered, but the certainty was gone from his voice. Am I? I said softly. I picked up my purse. The offer to drop the lawsuit is now mine to make. Drop it by the end of today, and I will grant you each a one-time stipend, enough to cover the legal fees you've incurred. A gesture of good faith for the family we once were. Continue, and you will get nothing. The choice is yours. I didn't wait for a response. I nodded to Amanda, and together we walked out of the conference room, leaving my family in stunned silence. They dropped the lawsuit that evening. The victory was bittersweet. I had secured my legacy, but I had irrevocably severed my ties with my blood relatives. There were no calls, no apologies. Just a formal notice from their lawyer and a silence that has lasted to this day. In the year that followed, I fully embraced my new life. I left my job at the museum and dedicated myself to the Vanguard. With the help of a network of women I gradually connected with, historians, lawyers, financiers, I learned to manage the vast resources I had been entrusted with. I used the funds to expand the scholarship programs, to buy and protect a tract of rainforest, to quietly acquire and return a stolen artifact to its country of origin. The locket no longer feels cold. It feels like a part of me, a constant reminder of Aunt Be's trust. I wear it every day, hidden under my clothes. The greatest treasures are often hidden in plain sight. Today, I am standing in the library of Blackwood Manor, not as an imposter, but as its guardian. The morning sun streams through the tall windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. On the desk before me is a new file, a new cause to support. A young woman in another country, building a company that could change everything in her field. She has no idea where the anonymous grant came from. I touch the locket at my throat and smile. The Vanguard endures. And I, Elara Vance, the quiet one who played with old bones and dust, am now a part of its story. The unwanted heirloom had become my purpose, and in protecting it, I had finally found myself.